All right, 2 days after U.S. President Donald Trump captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, he is now all set. He is rather in New York as we speak, and in just moments from now, he is all set to make his first court appearance in New York City along with his wife. And that's the visuals on the screens of Maduro, who is being taken to the New York court there. Earlier today in the evening, we had dramatic visuals showing Venezuela's seized President Maduro being transferred from an armored vehicle to a helicopter. The visuals on your screens right now shows dramatic images of Maduro with his wife being escorted by the officers under heavy security. Now, Maduro's arrival in New York follows his dramatic seizure in Caracas during a shock U.S. military operation over the weekend. Maduro and his wife are now charged in the U.S. with narco-terrorism, conspiracy, cocaine importation, and weapons offenses. U.S. officials have now accused him of leading a criminal network while in power. Yesterday, Trump said that America will tap into Venezuela's vast oil reserves and has also now issued new threats against a slew of other countries like Colombia, Mexico, Greenland, and even Cuba. Let's now tell you more about all that's happening in the United States of America with the Venezuelan president now being captured. So the U.S. has indicted Maduro and wife. Let's now take you through the big charges that are on the Venezuelan president and his wife. Number one, narco-terrorism conspiracy. Charge number two, cocaine importation conspiracy. Possession of machine guns and destructive devices. And lastly, the charge is conspiracy to possess weapons against the United States of America. It is under all these charges that a trial will take place in the days to come, because today it's just a procedural appearance of the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And well, to tell you more about all that's happening in New York right now, I have with us my colleague Natasha Israni. She's reporting from New York. Natasha, you're joining. I also have with us Aditya Rajkol, who's joining me live here from the studio. Natasha, you're joining us live from the New York courtroom, where in moments from now, Maduro will appear there. What is happening right now? What we do know that this is a procedural appearance and that the trial will take place in days, perhaps weeks to come.
Absolutely. This is just him appearing in court along with his wife to hear the charges and to show that he is here in the United States, ready to face these charges. But the trial actually does not begin. We also don't know who the lawyers for Maduro are going to be, but he will have access to lawyers, and he is likely to argue that he has sovereign immunity as the president of Venezuela. But the U.S. side, the U.S. prosecutors in turn are expected to argue that they don't consider him a valid president because the 2024 elections in Venezuela, according to Donald Trump and the U.S. authorities, were rigged. Outside the courthouse, there have been massive both protesters as well as supporters of Maduro from Venezuela, the Venezuelan community here in the United States, in New York, gathering in support. We spoke to some of them earlier, and some of them were in support of his capture, saying that he's corrupt and has devastated the Venezuelan economy. On the other hand, we've been hearing from those who feel that Trump is really wrong and violating international law in going into another country and then bringing out the president in that brazen attack. So as to the legal proceedings, this is again just the beginning, and it could take a really long time, according to legal experts, for all of this to wind its way through the U.S. federal court system.
Right, I'm also being joined by Victor Amaya, who's joining me live from Caracas. Victor, you're joining us live from Venezuela right now. What is the mood like there? What we're learning is that a state of emergency has been put in place and a decree has been issued to find and arrest anyone involved in supporting U.S. attack. But with your, if I may depose, president's trial underway there in New York, what is the sentiment like there in Venezuela right now?
The sentiment, thank you for having me. The sentiment in Venezuela is that Maduro is out of the country, but nothing has changed inside the country. His government is very well in place. Every minister is in the respective positions. And now the vice president is acting president of Venezuela and continuing with the policies of Nicolas Maduro. So the feeling is that a lot has changed and people follow the story of Nicolas Maduro in New York now, but at the same time, it's like nothing major has happened inside the Venezuela on the political scenario. We are now seeing the installation of a new National Assembly, a new parliament that is going to start his legislature right now, but it's going to be headed by the brother of the interim president, of the acting president of the country, Jorge Rodriguez, who was the president of the parliament for the last 5 years. So it's like nothing much has changed without Maduro in power in Venezuela. And at the same time, there are security concerns about what has been seen on the streets with civilian people carrying out firearms and weapons and threatening the opposition population for some retaliation for what happened during the weekend.
Right, Victor. Coming to you, Aditya. Now, when deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, he's there in front of the New York court there. The last time something like this happened, Aditya, was in 1990. That's during when the Latin American strongman was toppled by U.S. forces. We're talking about Panama's Manuel Noriega. Your thoughts on where this is headed to, the trial underway, what's next for Venezuela? Your thoughts on this?
Well, over the last 48 hours, Rahesha, we have seen very unprecedented developments taking shape. A country is invaded, a leader is almost kidnapped and abducted. And the way it is done, it's almost like a Netflix series running on the television sets. And that's what Trump remarked as well, that he almost felt that this was a television series. Now, after 48 hours now, we are witnessing the Venezuelan president being produced inside a court in Manhattan. What will really happen is that this is basically just an initial technicality. There's no big hearing that is going to happen. The judge is going to explain the charges that are against Maduro right now and his wife. You explained the four main charges, which is, of course, narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and finally, the conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. Apart from this, since this case may not have any bail conditions, so bail conditions are ruled out, but then a future course of action, a future date could be arrived at. What we know so far is that the US authorities allege Maduro was using his diplomatic cover, official position and alliances with criminal organizations like the Sinaloa cartel and the Tren de Aragua to in fact run and facilitate drug shipments and hide proceeds from Venezuela to the United States. Now, Donald Trump has also come out and threatened not just Venezuela, but also Cuba, Colombia, Mexico, and several other countries in the region. In fact, even as we speak right now, Raisha, there's a United Nations Security Council emergency meeting being held where Russia and China and several other countries have hit out at the United States. The US has said that we are not at war at Venezuela or its people, but this is a war against drugs. We'll have to wait and watch how things unfold, because this is establishing basically a changing world order where Europe's position is weakened, where Russia and China are more emboldened, and US certainly is not abiding by the international rules-based order.
Right, and US has perhaps struck a defiant tone, what you were also mentioning, Aditya. Coming to you, Natasha, we've been talking here about how this is historic, sitting president there at the New York court. Now, Maduro's lawyers are expected to contest the legality of his arrest, arguing that he is immune from prosecution as a sovereign head of state. You, of course, mentioned that this is just a procedural appearance and the trial will happen perhaps in days or weeks to come. But talk to us about the legality of Maduro's trial and where things stand right now.
Right. Maduro's lawyers are going to take a precedent from the Panamanian leader, Manuel Noriega, who also argued the same thing. He said, well, he's president of Panama and does not have sovereignty and cannot be accused of narco-terrorism in the U.S. courthouse. Well, while Noriega really pursued that argument, it came to naught. It did not work. So the chances of that working through the U.S. federal court system are really unlikely and really low at the moment. Norega's lawyers are going to argue that he is a president, he has sovereignty, but we have a slew of international norms which are going to be put into really close scrutiny already in parallel to all the developments. Here behind me is the United Nations, which is just a few kilometers south in Manhattan, where they're having a UN Security Council resolution, which is also discussing the legality of the United States going into Venezuela and bringing out the leader. So at the same time, Donald Trump and his team has thought about this. This has been in the works for weeks, actually months now. So they have also laid out the federal authorities what they consider to be a strong case of narco-terrorism. They feel they have proof when it comes to Maduro's transactions, financial transactions, including that of his wife, and they're going to have to produce that in court, and they plan to produce that in court. So this is going to be fascinating to watch from several different legal angles as it unfolds and as the trial really begins here in New York.
Right, Natasha. Of course, we'll track that very closely with you. Coming to you, Victor, what do Venezuelans really want at this point of time? Because the president, his trial, Maduro's trial, will take place. The vice president is in charge, but Trump says that US will run Venezuela. With all of that's happening, what do Venezuelans really want?
I think Venezuela wants a real transition in Venezuela. In July 2024, the last presidential election, 70% of the voters in a highly restrictive election voted against Nicolas Maduro and voted in favor of Edmundo Gonzalez. That has been proven by several machine tallies of the votes of that day. But Maduro claimed that he won the election and he continued in power. I think the majority of people in Venezuela wants that vote to be held like a real thing, to being translated into reality. But the reality is also considering what Marco Rubio said. Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez has no grip on power inside Venezuela. Most of the Venezuelan opposition leadership is in exile nowadays. So there is no certain path for a political transition right now in Venezuela that doesn't go through the system of the Chavismo government now in place.
Right. Stay safe, Victor. Thanks, Natasha. Victor and Aditya for joining me on Newsnight and sharing insights with us on this. All right, let's now tell you what's next for Venezuela after Maduro's capture. What are perhaps the possible scenarios? Number one. First, Trump could declare victory and then walk away. So that's scenario number one. In this scenario, Trump will proclaim mission accomplished, parade the capture of Maduro as a triumph of American will, and then rapidly reduce the US footprint. In such a scenario, Venezuelan institutions would be largely left intact. So that's scenario number one, that Trump declares victory. Moving on to the second scenario. In this scenario, Washington will perhaps use its US escalation to install friendly opposition. That is, that Washington will use its new position to push forcefully for complete regime change in Venezuela. That could mean tightening sanctions on remaining power brokers and expanding strikes against security installations. Lastly, this is a scenario which is a mix of all that could perhaps happen, which is a hybrid conflict. Now, this is the third and the last scenario, which could be a final outcome, which may be a messy hybrid one in which none of the sides really wins, because we're talking about a protracted struggle in which no actor fully prevails. Maduro's removal could weaken the opposition, but not erase its networks in the military. The US under Trump will be militarily powerful, but constrained by domestic fatigue with foreign wars. Now, this is a hypothetical situation we are talking about here. The possible scenarios after the situation that Venezuela is in. And perhaps in the United States of America, the upcoming midterm elections and doubts about the legality of its methods. So these are perhaps the three scenarios that can happen moving forward as we speak, with the Venezuelan president procedural appearance at the New York court. We'll be tracking this very closely, but for now, slipping into a very short break.